Hey everyone, it's Alisa. I have a statistics question for you for either step 1 or step 2. Go ahead and pause this, read the question, answer it, and then come back and we'll do it together. A first-year medical student is conducting a summer project with his medical school's pediatrics department using adolescent IQ data from a database of 1,000 patients. He observes that the mean IQ of the dataset is 100. The standard deviation he calculated to be 10. Assuming the values are normally distributed, approximately 95% of the measurements will fall in between which of the following limits? And your answers are A, 100 to 110, B, 95 to 105, C, 90 to 110, D, 90 to 100, E, 80 to 120, or F, 70 to 130. Now, this question is testing if you know normal distribution and standard deviation percentages. So this graph is gold to memorize. Make it your phone background, make it your computer background. This will help you a lot in these kinds of questions. So let's say your mean is right here. Then one standard deviation will encompass 68% of values. Let's say you want more than that. You want to encompass 95% of values. Well, that's 2 standard deviations. And finally, 3 standard deviations represents 99.7% of values. You can't figure out what your standard deviation is until they tell you. So in this case, your standard deviation is 10. So that means with 1 standard deviation, which is 68% of students right here, that's 10 IQ points on each side. So that's so 68% of students will be between the IQs of 90 to 110, and I have that listed right here. Now, 95% of students will have their IQs fall between 80 and 120. And the way I got that is because 2 standard deviations times 10 points is 20 IQ points on each side, hence 80 to 120. Remember, our mean is 100. And finally, 99.7%, 3 standard deviations, 3 times 10 is 30. So that will fall between 70 and 130. So those are kind of your numbers that you're working with. And you can use the same technique. Let's say your standard deviation was 15. Then 1 standard deviation would be 15 points, so that would give you 85 to 115. 2 standard deviations is 30 points, and that'll give you 70 to 130, etc. You need to know the initial mean and the value of the standard deviation, and then you can go 1, 2, and 3 standard deviations from there. Now, this question isn't asking us how many standard deviations. Well, it is in a way. It's asking us exactly what the values will be. So it's about a second order question. So let's go through our answers. Answer A is 100 to 110. Now, that's actually a trick answer because you cannot have a standard deviation only to one side. It has to be both below and above the mean value. So you can't just have above 100, you have to have below 100 as well. So you could either have 90 to 110 or 80 to 120, etc. You cannot have 100 to 110, and you also cannot have, by that definition, 90 to 100. Now, answer choice B is 95 to 105. Now, this range is less than 1 standard deviation from the mean. So that is not what we're looking for. 90 to 110 is exactly 68%, aka 1 standard deviation from the mean. We do not want 68%, we want exactly 95%. Now, this is an interesting option because it's exactly between 2 standard deviations. It's between 1 and 2 standard deviations. This is about 87% of measurements. Now, this is kind of hard to imagine, but pretend it's somewhere over here. And that'll give us an IQ of between 85 to 115. 80 to 120 is exactly 95%, or 2 standard deviations. And 70 to 130 is exactly 3 standard deviations, or 99.7%. scroll up and see what our answer choice wanted. Our answer choice wanted 95%, which is perfect. So that leaves us with the answer of F. So the takeaway point is that you need to remember the values for 1 standard deviation, which is 68%, 2 standard deviations, which is 95%, and 3 standard deviations, which is 99.7%. Those are key numbers to remember. Things like, 87%, you can kind of figure out with doing some math, but these values you definitely should remember. And remember that this only applies to a normal distribution, and this is what a normal distribution looks like. If they don't mention normal distribution, you can forget all this. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you next week.